Hello and welcome to my channel. This week I plan on doing something very different. I'm going to make some fun foam dice. I have a couple of pieces of scrap foam, out of which I'm going to make some squares of varying sizes, and these will form the basis of our dice. It's preferable that these are cut as accurately as possible, but as you know by now, I like to freehand things, so there's a good chance they might end up a little bit wonky. Well, at least the first one's looking promising. It's just a matter of moving on to the smaller sets. So altogether I'm going to make 2 large, 2 medium and 5 small dice. All oversized anyway. In the end these will be more ideal for kids or for less serious games. Because this foam is quite porous, I'm going to need to give them a cover. And for that I'm going to use this 1mm thick craft foam. There are probably many better ways of doing this, but this is the way I happen to be doing it. First of all, I cut out a strip long enough to cover the whole cube. Then I cover it with contact cement. And I also put contact cement on 3 sides of the cube. Then they just need a couple of minutes to dry, because the power of the contact adhesive doesn't work when it's wet. Then once it's ready, I wrap the first 3 sides of the cube around the strip of foam. If you use the template and measures everything out accurately, there's a better way to do this, but for me this is much quicker. Then I trim off the excess, add glue to the remaining side, wait for it to dry, then close it up. And once I trim off all the excess, there's just the top and bottom left to do. So I'll cut off 2 oversized squares and follow the same process as before. Then it's a matter of gluing them together, trimming off the excess, and repeat the same process for all the other cubes. I give everything a once over with a heat gun. This helps seal the foam and shrink any edges. Then using the Dremel I round off all the edges and make them all match. And this should help ensure that the dice rolls evenly. And once again give it a once over with a heat gun for the freshly cut areas. That's the basic shape of all our dice complete. I give all the edges a once over with the sanding sponge, and then using the silver sharpie I mark the numbers on all the dice, plus add the marking for the alternate dice as well. As you can see, I'm trying a few different ideas out, and this is just to mark where I'm going to be cutting. This isn't the final dice, as I want to spray paint them and make them look all nice. And for this one I'm trying out a noughts and crosses idea, where instead of using a board, each player takes turns rolling the dice, and the first one to get 3 of their kind wins. And now all that's left to do is to drill out all the holes. And I have to be careful here, because if I make any mistakes, the dice is completely ruined. And that's a bit of foreshadowing. And for the noughts and crosses dice, I find it easier to cut, because the drill can be unpredictable, doing anything other than a hole. The heat gun will open up these freshly cut lines, and here's the one that I boxed up trying to cut complicated shapes out with the Dremel. And next up I add on some white primer, then I start painting each individual dice. I've raided my old spray can drawer, so I've got quite a few colours to choose from. Once I've spray painted the dice, I hand paint on the remaining details, and I have to make sure the dots contrast with the dice colour, otherwise they could be hard to see. So anyway, that's all my dice completed. I also gave them a spray with the matte sealer. This helped protect them, which will be very useful as these dice could be thrown around quite a bit. So I have 5 different dice altogether, plus there was one that didn't make it, but I'm not too fussed with that. I'll go through the function of each dice individually. Designing these dice from scratch gave me an opportunity to be creative and create different purposes for each dice. Some of these may already exist in the real world, but I've not researched it, so I made what I thought could be quite useful. First up we have 4 standard red dice. Other than being extremely light, there's nothing too special about these. Thankfully they're fairly well balanced and the numbers come up quite randomly. This one I call the Chance Cube. I got this idea from episode 1 of Star Wars. Basically 2 people pick a colour, whichever it lands on wins. It's nice and simple, just like tossing a coin. Next up is my noughts and crosses dice. It's nice and simple, requires 2 players. One person picks noughts, the other one crosses, and the first to roll either 3 noughts or 3 crosses wins. Next up is the giant dice. This I'd be more inclined to use this for children's games, or maybe group family game where you have to throw the dice over long distances. But other than that, there's nothing too extraordinary about this one. And this is the colour picker die. There's a different colour on each side. So I'm playing a game with different colour counters. This is a good way to decide who plays first. Plus it could also be useful for other colour themed games, maybe like Twister. So those are my fun foam dice. What do you think of them? If you've got a favourite, let me know down below. Or if you have any suggestions for any other dice I can make in the future, then just leave a comment. Thank you for watching. Don't forget, if I can do it, so can you.